Well, hey everyone. I know a lot of you are out there, have lots of free time on your hands, and perhaps you're getting tired of Netflix and you're paging through social media, and maybe you're doing a lot of different things and not really sure what to do with yourself. So I thought I would take a few minutes here in the office to talk about books. Why not, right? If you've ever been to my office, you know that I've got quite a collection of books. Many I've read, some I've skimmed, and some I haven't read. I'll read them someday. But the point is, we've got so many books, and maybe we should take a couple of minutes and talk about some of them. Now, this wasn't my idea. I actually got this idea, or stole this idea, if you will, from Dr. Russell Moore, who's doing a thing every day called Reading in Exile, which I think is a pretty clever title for this. And he goes through his own personal library, which is probably even a lot more substantial than mine, and he picks out books and he identifies them and talks about what they're all about, and some he likes and some he doesn't like, but he just sort of shares a little bit about each book to kind of help us get some new ideas and new perspectives. So I thought maybe I would try something similar. And since Dr. Moore, Russell Moore, was the one who came up with this idea, maybe we should start with his book. It is actually one of my favorite books. It's called Onward by Russell Moore, and the subtitle kind of paints a picture for us. It says, Engaging the Culture Without Losing the Gospel. And what I really like about this book is Russell Moore walks through a lot of different aspects of what have happened in our culture and in our society, and how the church has both played into the problems and responded to some of the problems and been part of some of the problems. So it's really a call to the church to pay attention to what's going on, to what we've been doing as the church, and to sort of reevaluate our position and our perspective and our outlook so that we can move onward. And what I like about it is the way that he just kind of walks through, and it's pretty interesting. Chapter 1 is actually called A Bible Belt No More. And it explains some of the shifts that have taken place in our culture, in our society, where, not everyone has a full concept and understanding of every aspect of Christianity like we once did. People have moved beyond that. It's become something different. So we no longer sort of live in a Bible Belt, no matter where we are in this country. It's different than it used to be. And that spills into chapter 2, which is something a little kind of similar. It says, From moral majority to prophetic minority. And he gives a lot of really great examples. He's got a lot of really interesting quotes and good ways of saying things. And in this particular chapter, he says that it would be a tragedy to get the right president and the right Congress and the wrong Christ. What I like about this section, this chapter, is that he begins to lay out that we can't rely upon the government. We can't rely upon presidents and congressmen and congresswomen and whoever else in authority to be the people that are pushing the agenda of the church. We can't rely upon politicians to be the ones who are doing the work that we're supposed to be doing as the church. And that's become part of our problem. We've merged together Christianity and our way of government, our form of government. We now have a civic religion rather than a religion based upon Christ and the gospel of Christ. So that's another great thing about this book, is he kind of points that out a little bit. And he addresses that from the aspect of culture and government. And he says this, and this is a really important thing, in one of the chapters about culture. He says, a church that loses its distinctiveness is a church that has nothing distinctive with which to engage the culture. Now, to me, that might be the best line in this entire book. A church that loses its distinctiveness is a church that has nothing distinctive with which to engage the culture. Because perhaps what has happened, and what we read a little about in this book, is that in an attempt to be relevant, in other words, relevant means looking like the world so that people aren't uncomfortable with church or with the gospel or with who we are as church people. So in an attempt to be relevant, if that's what we go for, it actually makes us irrelevant. Because we have nothing to offer that is any different from the things that are already being offered. Right? Because there are so many different issues and problems and difficulties that our world is facing, that are in our culture and our society. And so many different things have been tried to solve those problems. We've had social engineering and government intervention and all different kinds of ideas and philosophies, and nothing has worked. So if we try to make everyone comfortable with Christianity as just being yet another way of addressing some of these problems, we actually become irrelevant, right? An irrelevant church, right? And so to many people, the church that is now irrelevant looks more like rules and regulations rather than looking like Jesus. The church was never supposed to look like rules and regulations, but as its founder, Christianity is founded after Christ, right? So that's what we're supposed to look like, not like some of these other things. And what Russell Moore does in this is he covers a lot of very specific examples and points out a lot of shortcomings, both of the church and, of course, as followers of Jesus, we are the church. And he points out how we're losing our way in so many important areas. And there's this chapter towards the end of the book called A Gospel Counter Revolution. And when he gets to this point, it's kind of a call to action, a new way for us to begin looking at things. And I love the quote, "Many assume that somehow by disengaging, they will be better able to carry out the mission of the church without recognizing that they have already surrendered part of their mission and that total cultural disengagement doesn't end culture wars, but rather provokes them." Because what we've done now is turn inwardly and blame everyone else for all the things that are happening, rather than looking at our inaction or our loss of direction or our trying to be more relevant than we are truthful. What's happened is that we're really disengaging from the culture. We're either trying to fit in or we're trying to hide from it. And when we do that, it doesn't help culture wars, it rather fuels them. Makes it worse because there's no voice standing against it. So one of the things that he gives is this really interesting story. He gives this example of how we need to have a different mindset, and not a mindset of us versus them and how we're really good and they're all really bad, so we need to protect ourselves and we need to tell everyone else how bad they are while we're hiding behind these walls. He tells the story of when he was a little boy in church. A man came in and he had a tattoo, and the tattoo was of a naked lady. You remember when those were really popular? It seemed like a lot of military people had those. I remember as a kid seeing those tattoos, and I can sort of visualize that right now because they all kind of look the same. But he talked about, he saw this man in church who had one of those tattoos on his arm. And he thought to himself, I can't believe that man would be in my church. And I can't believe he would bring that sort of thing into the church. And he began to see this person as someone who wasn't welcome there, who didn't belong there because of this particular tattoo that he had. And of course, we might all agree that those kind of tattoos or things that depict that type of image don't necessarily belong in church. But the point is much bigger than that. It's the man who had the tattoo that we should be concerned about, right? Because if we're looking at people and saying, oh, they don't belong here, we forget the fact that that's the message of the gospel. We didn't belong there either until we were saved by Jesus, until we were brought to a new understanding of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, right? So what that leads to, I think, is how people will look at Christians, look at followers of Jesus, and they'll say things like, that's the last thing I want to be. I don't want to be anything like that. Rules, regulations, judgment, thinking you're better than we are, calling us to all these different things, right? No wonder that we're having such a hard time engaging our culture when we put forth such a bad image. So this book is really great. I highly recommend it. It really calls out the church, but not just calls out the church, but provides us with new ways to think and provides us with different opportunities and different actions that we should take on to make sure that we are being the church that we're supposed to be, the church that is required to make a difference and to make an impact. And I can't help but think about the Lord's Prayer when I finish this book. The part about when Jesus says, pray this way, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's about the kingdom of God coming to earth, the way that God intends it. It's his kingdom, it's his will, it's not ours. We need to be ambassadors of that kingdom. We need to be ambassadors of reconciliation. We can't be setting ourselves up and saying we're so much better than everyone else. We have to be saying to ourselves, listen, I'm just a beggar who has found bread, and I'm out here telling everyone else where they can find it too. So I recommend this book, and maybe you can check it out. So, if this was useful to you, let me know. If you have any suggestions about some books we could look at, let me know. Otherwise, maybe we'll do this every day for a few minutes. So, see you later.